I've seen a flying saucer.
You've seen one?
Yes, definitely.
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
To cover up our mistakes.
I've met people who swear they've seen Bigfoot.
Join us for a journey into the obscure.
You are now listening to The Wow Pod.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. I've had a fight getting in here today. Can you hear me?
Jared really loves the IT. He is the IT department.
Oh,
I don't know if he enjoys it.
It is the worst idea ever having me run computers. I'm a dang ape.
So yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so we made it.
Another week.
We had meant to start this 1 hour ago.
True.
Yeah.
Let's come in with some weird news.
We got some weird news, some fun stuff.
Some weird news. Yeah. So I'll go first. Do you want to play the clip?
Yeah.
Or you know what? Let's talk about it for just a second.
Okay. What's your thoughts?
So Chris Cuomo, everyone knows who he is. He's a reporter.
Uh-huh.
And his brother apparently is the governor, Andrew Cuomo of New York. He's the governor of New York. So with the current status in New York now in the coronavirus, there's a bunch of chatter about how they're handling things. And, nobody, of course, can do it right. But so to set this interview up, it's much longer than the clip we're going to play. But the banter starts throughout the interview. They're just cutting one another off over and over and over again. And then Chris tells him several times throughout the interview, I'm going to have to cut you loose. You can tell he's just irritated.
Now, Chris is the
he looks to be the younger one.
Well, he is the younger one.
It could be makeup, but
he's a news anchor.
Yes.
And Andrew is the governor of New York State.
Yes.
And but yeah.
And they're brothers.
They are brothers.
And I have brothers, so I found this story hilarious because they couldn't contain themselves. So play the clip.
Okay.
Curfew, I don't like the word curfew. Dad tried to have a curfew for me. I never got past the resentment, but I do believe you'll see more tightening if the numbers don't slow.
Your problems with the curfew. It's the least of your problems, just so you know.
I never fight. You violated the curfew all the time. It caused much pain, but that's a different story.
I don't believe in rules. Governor Andrew Cuomo, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
I love you. I'm proud of what you're doing. I know you're working hard for your state, but no matter how hard you're working, there's always time to call mom. Just so you know.
Yeah, I called mom just before I came on this show. By the way, she said I was her favorite.
She never said
Good
that.
news is she said you were her second favorite. Second favorite son,
No.
Christopher.
We both know neither of us are mom's first or second favorite in the family. I can't believe you're lying to my audience. You've blown the credibility of the entire interview. I should have ended it before.
Second favorite son.
Politicians are very tricky. You throw a word in there after the first time you said it, creates a lot of doubt. But I appreciate you clarifying.
Not me. Straight across the plate.
Stay strong.
Straight across the plate.
Stay strong. Stay for your people. And I appreciate you being here. I love you, brother.
You too, brother.
So if you listen to the whole interview, I don't know if Chris has a piece.
What was the interview about? Was it about this
It was about It was about the curfew and the spread of coronavirus and how they were taking pretty individual stances on it. The problem with the entire interview is they spent the entire rest of the interview cutting one another off.
Just bickering.
So you couldn't hear their talking points. And so I'm wondering if Chris had someone in his ear saying, pull it together. So then he was like, we're not neither of us are favorite brothers or favorite sons or whatever, but it was funny to me that you can see the pressure that they're both under right now. So they're kind of like taking it out on one another. Pretty fun.
Well, I imagine Andrew's under a lot of pressure with being the governor right now.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's the mayor of New York or the mayor of Miami is in very critical condition
from the virus.
So it's affecting the officials. So I'm sure that the governor's probably sheltered away somewhere, but as you can imagine, this has got to be a pretty trying time for him as well.
Well, I wonder if because of spring break and all those kids that still went to spring break, if just that, gathering is going to cause more issues.
I had heard that there were 19 positive tests that came from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime you take a pandemic and then put a bunch of people together, Singapore it's the only country that's done it right out the gate. And if you look at the numbers, Singapore didn't have that exponential growth. And I think we've modeled a lot of what we're doing here, the draconian efforts that are being done here, after what Singapore has done.
What did Singapore do? Right.
So what we know so far that China didn't do right is what they didn't realize is that most of the cases were coming from their healthcare system. So you would go into a hospital and you may not have coronavirus, but you would get it because they didn't shut the hospitals down to visitors. They weren't keeping social distancing inside the hospital facilities. So the hospital facilities, while everyone else was sheltering in place, these hospital facilities were like these breeding grounds. And what we've seen,
you go, usually a family member's taking you, so
or several, correct.
Okay.
So what Singapore did, and what we've tried to model from what I'm seeing after them, is normally in the United States, before a nurse goes into your room, she right inside the door, she grabs a fresh pair of gloves and puts on gloves, and then she attends to you, oftentimes without a mask, because it was often thought that they would scare the patients.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore, hearing about what's going on in China, anticipated the jump, and they, first of all, when they say wash your hands, people. Something that simple. Singapore, in the Singapore hospitals, first of all, the first thing they did is you don't come in unless you have the virus. You don't need to be seen by a doctor. We can do it online. We can prescribe things online. If you're in a state of crisis, come in, but don't come in because I just had a little shortness of breath. Let's talk first. And they eliminated a lot of exposure that way. The second thing they did is they issued countrywide in every hospital, before you enter a room, you go to the hand washing stations and you surgical wash to your elbows.
Mm-hmm.
You enter the room, you glove up. You put on a mask before you enter the room, you glove up. You do what you have to do in there. The mask comes off, goes in the garbage. The gloves come off, goes in the garbage. As you exit the room, you surgical wash. It's a 4-minute wash. Then they stopped all internal meetings. They said, listen, we don't need these internal meetings. We don't need to be spreading it if we're getting it amongst one another. And then because so many people in the healthcare industry are being exposed to it, but don't really have bad symptoms, they told them, we've only got COVID patients in here. If you can work, come to work. If not, if you're too ill, stay home. But if you feel like, yeah, I can work, come to work. Same measures. Mask up, glove up.
Mm-hmm.
And wash, wash, wash. So the United States started doing that. A lot of hospitals started saying, we're no longer going to be in fear of scaring the patients with our little paper masks. We're going to wash before and after every single visit inside a room. We're going to, with those who are in respiratory failure and they have to intubate and things, what happens is they aspirate it into the air during this process. So we followed what Singapore did. Singapore said, when you're doing ventilators, you're in hazmat suits.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so normally they don't do that in the United States. They just ventilate. Well, what they found is that this growth in Singapore started out at a pretty high spike and then leveled off. So hopefully we'll see that here because we're kind of taking all of those measures. And then social distancing, stay home.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of arguing back and forth about that. There's a lot of pushback about the curfew in New York City. It's a culture thing. It also lends to a sense of fear, but I think that the interview was funny.
Well, that is funny that they're just
kind of bickering.
Mommy's blown off.
Yeah.
I haven't heard about the curfew in New York City. I don't know. I so far out here we haven't been affected very much.
There's a guy in where I live.
Yeah, but I mean, like economy wise and law wise.
Right. Other than that, I asked my husband because he's considered essential, as you are,
Mm-hmm.
in your jobs. I said, well, what do the highways look like? Are they, because if you look at what is it, the main thoroughfare in Los Angeles, it's vacant.
Yeah.
I said, what do the highways look like? And he says, about normal, maybe a little busier than normal, actually. I was like, well, great.
My drive to work's out west, so
right.
They're still doing road work. I don't know, maybe this will start a new paradigm where people who have established that they can work from home from here forward will start working from home and free up a lot of, I mean, if you think about it, maybe that'll help out with pollution and traffic jams you hear people talk about and things like that. I don't know.
I think it will bring a shift in the way we treat patients. What they're finding is it's a good 70% of all hospital visits are visits that could have been done via internet.
Yeah, and that's already starting from what I understand.
And I think that shift will stick around. I think it'll stay because they're realizing that, I mean, if you ask most physicians, they'll say most of what I do could be taken care of by a health coach.
Well, yeah. And, well, they do certain things every time you go in, like when they do the,
blood pressure.
Blood pressure and breathing and things like that. And
don't get me started.
I suppose they could come up with items that could do that for you that plug into your computer or your phone. You call them on the phone. You say, here's this. All right. Put
your heart. I mean, they have a heart rate monitor in an app.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even further on, listening to your breathing, they could, technology could free us from that. Of course, I might go to the doctor once a year just for a checkup, just a screening that I get a discounted rate on my insurance for. So
right. I think that you're not the norm. I think that what you'll find in the broad spectrum of people that visit the doctors often, I know a few.
Normal for a male.
Well, I don't know. There are a lot of people that just visit the doctor a lot for things that they really don't need to be there for.
Males don't commonly visit the doctor, all studies. Females visit the doctor, a lot more. They have a lot more things that they've got a mindset and a biology that calls for
more cautious.
Yeah.
Less throw caution to the wind.
I think guys don't think about it. That's me. I just don't think about doing it.
Could be. Could be.
You know, I know you hear all those memes or see those memes of men.
This is why women live longer.
Well, a man with a cold is whatever, but when I get a cold, I don't bug anyone to look at me. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I've got a coronavirus story as well.
Okay.
And this comes from New York as well.
Okay.
So in New York City, a guy took the social distancing to the extreme.
Yes.
So we're on a subway. We don't need the sound. You see the guy? He's on the outside of the subway car, and they are going. And he's just hanging on out there. He's like, I don't want to catch what you guys got. See
what?
that?
That's not a good idea.
No, it's not. Check him out. He's just hanging off the side of the car. Just swinging off the edge. But he's keeping proper social distance.
He's going to die for other reasons. Coronavirus ain't got nothing on smashing into the wall at 86 miles an hour hanging onto a subway.
Or falling. Those subways, sometimes those trains go high in the air.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Just stay home or walk.
Well, maybe he really had to get to work. Maybe he works as a trapeze artist.
So this is no big deal.
Why do they call him trapeze artist, though? Another question. I mean, I'm sure it's an art, but
that is a very good question.
Astute observations by Jared. All right, I've got one more story.
Okay.
So Italy's been hit hard by Corona, right?
Yes, decimate.
Yeah, they're thoroughly Catholic, and they want to continue to go to church and observe. So they've started doing, I guess, like we are now, online meetings, which is a good idea, you know. But
sure.
Anyways, so this priest is doing his meeting, and he left all the filters on for his meeting. So you can see right now, there's like snowfall filters as the priest is getting ready. He steps back and boom, up pops a robot helmet on his head. Now he's got some bands on and there's glittery stuff falling. And then,
oh no.
So all the filters are left on. Remember when that police officer in Canada did that?
Yes. Yeah, I remember that during a press conference.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a strange fact for you.
Okay.
I read this last night. I was kind of researching for this show and I came across this. And I've been thinking about it all day, so I want you to be thinking about it for at least a couple of days.
Oh, so it ruined your morning? Now you want to pass it on, huh?
Yeah. So did you know
that
in 1 year, you produce enough saliva to fill 2 bathtubs?
That's easy. We were doing good.
And when I came across it, it's got a picture of this lady, and you just see her feet, and she's just in this warm bubble bath. Like they ruined it for me.
Oh.
The thought of that.
I'm going to remind you of how many spiders you swallow a year. How many spiders do you swallow a year?
I'm going to sleep with a mask on.
It says 3 spiders a year. How about the lady that went in and had a spider that was living in her ear hole?
In her ear. Oh, yeah. I'm going to sleep with plugs in and a cork. Well,
what if the spiders lays a nest in between your pinky toe and your other toe?
That's so gross. Oh, so gross. Okay.
Right. Take us to happy, Betsy.
Our show today is not. It's a good show. It's a good show. What I want to cover today is something that I've been super interested in for a long time now, but I mean, it's quantitative, but not really. Global consciousness. And what brought me to this is the pandemic we're in.
Mhm.
So I had started following this global consciousness project several years ago, just to see where it would end up. It's a group of scientists. It started with a group of scientists from Princeton, and they posed the question, does our consciousness, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, the things we say, and even our intent, our intentions, have an effect on or interact directly with our physical world?
Okay.
So
So this is if everybody's feeling the same notion.
not everybody, because they started very small. The idea is that our brains receive neurons, correct? That stimulate and tell it what's working, what's not working, and they process those. So do our thoughts and feelings, attentions, and emotions stay inside our skull, or do they exit our skull? And what effect does that have on the physical surroundings, our physical world around us?
Mm-hmm.
So to answer this, the first thing they did was they created this RNG. It's a random number generator. And it's not electronic pulses that manage this RNG. Instead, it uses electron tunneling. So an electron is shot out, and there's a barrier or a diode. And what that effect has is the circuit that drives the electron against this barrier is supposed to stop the barrier. But what we know about electrons is that they really do have a mind of their own, and almost like teleportation, they just get through. Mm-hmm. So they created this machine that they bounce these electrons against a barrier. And if the electron happens to the other side, it's given a 0. If it stays on this side, it's rated as a 1. And what they found is that it was as random as flipping a coin. So if you flipped a coin 200 times, you would get roughly 100 heads, 100 tails, maybe 98 heads and 102 tails one time or whatever. But there would be a bell curve, so to speak, that it would level out, that all of those random flips would remain random.
Well, it's a 50% chance. So it's
right.
a 50% chance when the electrons hit this membrane that
right.
they go through or stay.
Right.
Okay.
And what they did when they first got it, or when they first built these, they realized that it was completely unpredictable. So not only was it random, but there's no way to predict, because we can't be inside this electron. We don't understand the properties that get it through to the other side. We're just not there yet. Maybe one day we will, but we don't currently. So it's completely unpredictable and random. So to test this, the first thing they did...
Smaller. I mean, we're talking inner space level small to see inside the electron.
Yeah. So they used to be in boxes, almost like a suitcase size. And for 12 years, the first 12 years of this project, they put these boxes, they did it several different ways, but one of the ways was they set it on the table, and they had 2 people come in, and the 2 people never touched the box, never touched the table that the box was on. They were completely separate from the box. And the scientist told them to focus their intent on zeros. And the random number generator responded with 80-90% zeros.
Oh, so the electrons went through when the
intention was focused. And the same with ones. Focus your intention on ones. And then the electrons would go to ones. So like, okay, so that's pretty interesting, but what if we're not in the same room? What if there's something happening in the ground? What if we try with people that are, say, in another country? Same result. What if we try with people who don't even know about the box and just tell them we want you to focus on zeros? Same result.
But now, who are these people? What's the control?
All different kinds. So
how did they find them? Was it like a cold call?
Hello, can you please focus on zeros? What they did is like they do with drug trials.
Vehicle's warranty. Yeah. Go on. What?
It's kind of like what they do with drug trials. Mm-hmm. People sign up, they don't know what they signed up for, and then they are a part of this. So it's really a broad spectrum, all across the board, all spiritualities. They didn't even discuss any of that. So from there, the scientists said, okay, so this is really kind of pseudoscience at this point, but there's got to be something. There's got to be something. So they take it to the head of Princeton, and they show him this 12 years worth of data. Well, the head of Princeton not only doesn't discredit them, but he built an entire section of the college to support this global consciousness.
He builds a lab for it.
A lab, support staff, funding, all of that. So he gets all of that. And
this is like the beginning of Ghostbusters.
Yeah. So that gets us to the project. So the Global Consciousness Project is the idea that coherent consciousness creates order in the world, and subtle interactions link us, not only with just one another, but with our Earth. So they take and they start out with, I think they started out with 65. We now have 70.
So they showed that our consciousness affected the world, but does that affect each other?
Well, that's right now, and we can speculate, but right now they're still just scientists. The most recent symposium that
what are you saying? They're just scientists, like they have
they're just collecting data. They're not interpreting it.
A lot of tweed.
Yes. Those bats. So right now they're just collecting data.
How would they test that?
Okay, so we're going to get into this because this next part. Okay, so pull up the slides, and the first slide that I sent to you shows the map. So there are roughly 70 sites. Now, the reason that there's only 70...
Why do they gather so many sites in the tiny island of Hawaii?
Yeah,
might that have something to do with the nice...
Well, I think what they...
And then
what's been mentioned is like...
Sorry guy stuck up in Alaska.
Yeah, so in order for it to be considered a host site, it has to have reliable internet, because these random number generators are working all day, every day. And not only are they working, but they are randomly generating zeros and ones at 200 per second. So they're collecting a ton of data.
I've got lots of questions. One, how do they count electrons? Two, how do they know the electrons on which side?
So the way that it's set up is it only registers with the zero if the electron can be seen or read by this random number generator on the other side of the barrier, and then it's that fast.
Okay. So
this map shows where all of these random number generators are based on having a good host site. It's got to be in a place where it's not going to be bothered, and it has constant connectivity with the internet.
Okay.
So, like Antarctica doesn't have any. There's only one in the middle of Asia, so on and so forth. So, if you go to the next slide, this is an internet transfer of the data. This is what it looks like. This is the combined data from 48, they call them eggs, host eggs, because they're about the size of an egg now. They used to be the size of a suitcase, but technology has gotten much smaller.
So these little machines that throw electrons at a barrier
Yes.
are small. Okay.
So this is what it looks like. Zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones.
So
But as you
for
can
the
see,
people listening, it looks like a kid. Well, it looks like a couple kids with crayons were having a
no,
scribble contest along
what
the line.
it looks like is a seismograph.
Okay, well,
It's kind of the same measurements,
like
just that little bit of
maybe
change.
they ran out of paper, and so they reused paper and different colors. It's a scribble.
So if you go to the next slide, and for those of you watching on YouTube, you can just thumb through these, but what we're showing is, and you can find all of this at the Global Consciousness website, this next depiction is cumulative deviation. So not just one day, but over a long span of time from all of the eggs that are operational.
Okay, so we got on this graph, there's 23 hours of the day. So this is a 1-day period, has 23 hours. And then on the left-hand side, it has 0, 10, 20, 30. So is that counting how many eggs get through?
Approximately. There's a lot of information that's been combined on this. What the average cumulative deviation is shown in the black line. So for those of you listening, this black line stays above or below the norm. So that there's a norm, which is the yellow dotted line.
Okay.
And this black line, it deviates, but kind of similar to
It follows the
a
same
coin toss. Kind of similar to a coin toss. You might get heads 3 times in a row and then get tails twice.
So at the norm where it registers at 10, that means there's been approximately 20 electrons thrown at the barrier, but 10
Correct.
through 10 stayed. Okay.
Correct. So with all of this information, the scientists then, what they're trying to understand is what is this picking up on? Because if you go to the next slide,
Okay.
they take one of these host eggs, these RNGs. The first place they take it to is Devil's Tower. Now, Devil's Tower is, the Shoshone Indians consider that a very sacred place.
Yeah, it's you've probably seen a picture of it. It looks like well, it's a rock.
It looks like a giant petrified tree.
Yeah, it's a rock formation that goes straight up and down. It's in Wyoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in Wyoming, and it goes relatively vertical, and it's I don't know, 300, 400 feet tall or something.
Right.
You've probably seen a picture of it.
So they take this pod and they meet this Shoshone shaman. And the shaman does this healing ritual. So he finds this, what he says is a healing spot, and he stops and does this healing ritual, and they have the egg near him. And at the end of it, they tell him that, you can see the egg is not behaving normally. So instead of being above or below and above or below, as he gets further and further down this healing ritual, it stays above.
So
and
it's just climbing above the normal.
Right. It's like it would be like you flipping a coin and then suddenly getting 50 or 60 heads, one right after the other.
Okay.
So he tells the shaman this, and the shaman said, yes, that's what's happening. I knew something was, but that's what's happening.
Okay.
So the next thing they do is they go to the Great Pyramid, and they go with,
now, for those of you that don't know, the Great, I'm just kidding.
so they go to the Great Pyramid, and they take numbers on, it looks like 6 instances.
Okay.
And all 6 times, the numbers are also off the charts. They're nowhere near normal. Where they go off the charts the most is in the second time they take it, and that's in the inner chambers. Now, the inner chambers in the Great Pyramids.
Now, on the Great Pyramid, though, I want to point out all of these where the healing ritual deviated above the norm. At the Great Pyramid,
below.
It deviates below the norm. Like, so the healing ritual maintained electrons on one side, and the pyramid took electrons to the other side.
Correct. So again, the scientists say we don't know what's causing the deviation. We're just collecting data. But what they noticed is the greatest deviation happened in the inner chambers. Well, these inner chambers is where we have postulated for years that during the building of these pyramids, that's where the astronomers would do their observations. They were observation points because they're great big long, like 17-foot ceilings that have obelisk-shaped openings in the top. And that's where they had the most deviation. So they just log it. This is just, again, something. So they're going about and they're recording and recording and recording, and they decide to check. Let's check some dates in history that may have had worldwide effect. So if you go to the next slide, you can see the day of Princess Diana's funeral.
Now, how do they check a different day?
So they go back and mine their own, all of these, because they're being recorded. Right now as we speak, they're recording everywhere.
So, so they were running during the...
They were running during this. They've been running for like 25 years.
Oh.
So they go back and they're like, all right, let's check this. And the data shows that there was some collective global consciousness that this data is on this chart, the blue line is normal. The variance is in the light blue lines, and there's a red line that shows the formal data after it's all collected. If you compare them and stack them all against one another, that's where we were at in the world.
Well, it climbed quite a bit.
Yeah.
During her funeral.
So the next illustration, for those of you listening, you're going to have to look these up. It's astonishing, the deviance in this one.
So the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, on the graph, it shows the normal rides at a pretty predictable line above the center mark, but it deviates way down below at a drastic rate.
So suddenly, every single random number generator in 70 host places all over the world.
This is around the world.
All over the world, not just in Haiti. I don't even think there is one in Haiti. All over the world during this earthquake and for days afterwards, I think it's like 8 days afterwards, these numbers, it's like they just started getting ones. And it was one for thousands and thousands and thousands of random numbers. They were all ones. And there's another thing that shows the spike. So for some people that may be easier to understand, but the normal on the same slide, the next picture, the normal rides above and below, and then there's this giant spike the day of the earthquake. Now, these random number generators are not electronic, so they're not feeling any kind of charge coming from the earth. They are picking up on something else. So that's because they thought, okay, maybe it has to do with just the earth. The Princess Diana blew that out of the water because nothing happened on that day other than global sadness, I guess you would say. So then the next one is there were 33 miners, and I followed this story very closely.
Yeah, I remember when this happened.
Yes, and they made a movie about it and all of that stuff. Back in October of 2010, 33 miners, there was a major cave-in in a mine in Chile, and 33 miners were trapped down there. When they started pulling the miners out, it's like the scientists said, listen, we don't want to say that this is from prayers, but it feels like there's some sort of global consciousness putting into the universe, hoping.
It was on the news all around the world too, and it was on
all over the world
every day. And then
so these graphs depict the same thing as the earthquake in Haiti.
Yeah, so it doesn't depict negative or positive. It just seems to depict when there's
it's just
point for the world, there seems to be that change on the negative side, not negative emotionally, but
right
numerically.
So bringing it a little closer to home, the terrorist attacks.
Okay.
9/11. What's most interesting to me about this, and the scientists ahead of this project are not even commenting. All they're saying is they're just reporting the data. As you can see, everything's fine until 4 a.m. the morning of the attacks. At 4 a.m., it starts to spike. The first plane doesn't hit for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So there was a building of this consciousness of what was coming before the first plane ever even hit.
Yeah, they're obviously saying that this can't guarantee that was
the first plane hit at 8:40. This starts to really veer off at about, it shows the 4 o'clock mark, but at about 5:30, we are off the charts in zeros being generated. And that is hours before the first plane ever hit. Hours before.
Well, these are ones being generated.
Okay, so yeah, ones above.
So this one goes above and it climbs up. Looking at it, starts its climb at 4 o'clock, and then at 8:45 it has a little bit of a downturn again, and then it climbs back up almost immediately, and then at 10:30 it starts to go back down.
Yeah. So again, they cannot explain why.
So they're not even saying this has anything to do with September 11th. They're not going to make that claim, but
no.
Without seeing the rest of the data, it is kind of interesting.
So what the scientists that had this project are saying is, first of all, we really are just scientists. We're just collecting these random numbers, and we're seeing patterns in them and they've done the odds, they've worked the odds. The odds that this pattern would have changed on 9/11 are 1 in a trillion. Because they have 70 host sites. And we're not talking it changed in New York City. it changed in all 70 host sites all over the world.
So when they gathered their data, they're compiling the data from all the sites at once.
Yes, and I've been watching their interactive map, and it's pretty interesting right now. So I think the reason that this applies to the pandemic, and I'm really interested to see when they're finally able to compile all the information. I'm sure they're just right now just madly working through it. What I'm interested to see what happens globally with these random number generations through this pandemic, because it really is global panic everywhere. But they have an interactive map at tyhold.global-mind.org, and we'll link that.
Global.mind.
Mind.org. It's, if you just type under the Global Consciousness Project, it'll take you to their interactive map, and you can see the random number generators. They're kind of color coded, so you can see which ones are firing at the same time with one another. It's interesting to watch, and I'm interested to see what the numbers look like. But it will also be interesting to figure it to get to a position where we can use this data. Like, does the way we view an object, like Einstein's theory, spooky at a distance, does the fact that we are experiencing it change it? And does the way we experience it or the way we interpret it also change it? So are we, in fact, because of panic, making panic a reality or creating more areas for panic? Well, I think that isn't even arguable. Of course we are.
Yeah, we could argue that the panic makes further panic. I mean, that's not just us. That happens in wildlife. I mean,
exactly.
When one bird takes flight off an electric pole, they all take flight.
And that is another. So what is consciousness? That's the biggest thing. What is consciousness? Is it, because we haven't been able to, we started out and we decided what the nervous system was, and we decided what the brain does, and we decided the heart and all of the different parts of it, and we decided the spine, and we dove into all of that, but we still don't know what consciousness is. We don't know when it starts. We don't know where it comes from. We don't even know how to define it.
Well, it's not physical, so.
Right. You can't touch it, but neither is gravity. And again, we struggle defining gravity. We don't even understand it.
In a way, gravity's physical because, if I drop something, it falls.
Sure. The effects of gravity, yeah. And the effects of consciousness are also physical too, because then we have a sense of self. When you're unconscious, you don't have a sense of self. You no longer are you, so to speak. And then, do animals, like you mentioned, have consciousness or a sense of self? Or do they just have that primal, like when the bird takes off, these primal instincts kick in and they all take off too? I don't know if we'll ever know, but it's an interesting idea to think that we can affect these random number generators, both intentionally and unintentionally. And when people are grouped together, they have a much larger effect than when they have these interactions that are just happenstance, like in a busy train station or on a street corner, where the interactions aren't intentional. They've tried these number generators inside music halls where people are singing music together, and that changes the number. And they've tried them at funerals where people are mourning together, and it changes the number. but it also changes the number when these global things happen, and it's registering people.
Well, do they
at a
talk?
corner.
Is there a variance? Like when they took the ones to the Great Pyramid, did they take all of them there, or did they take a couple of them there? And was there a large variance between the ones there and the ones not there, or did they all register the same that day, that at that time period?
So,
Because I think that's one of the larger tests, is whether you can
they took
change the variance.
12. They took 12 to each of those sites, and they took the data from all 12 of those number generators and saw that all 12 of those number generators responded the same.
What did they compare to the rest of the generators? I think is
Now,
a bigger
the
question.
rest of the generators, if we're talking about global consciousness, the rest of the world wouldn't have known that they were doing a healing ritual.
Well, I'm not
Devil's
asking whether they know. I want to know what's the variance between those ones there and the ones not there. Was their variance greater at the time then?
So the ones that they measured during those events, these big events that they're measuring, like 9/11, the reason they used that as a kind of a sticking point is because everyone within minutes all over the world knew about the terrorist attacks.
Yeah. But what I'm asking is, like, I guess I would like to see, let's say the healing ritual one. I'd like to see what all 79 of the generators said before, what they all said during, and what they all said after, and see what the variance between the ones at the location and the ones away from the location are.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they put that into a graph, but in his symposium when he talked about this, they did compare everything, and what they said is the ones that were on site that had the consciousness of what was going on had access to them, or they were within that area, I guess, they registered all the same but different than the rest of the world. That's why they decided to start checking, like, well, let's check some global things to see what's happening, to see if this is happening on a large scale. So the Devil's Tower and the pyramid were kind of their first field experiments. They're like, well, that's interesting because they're picking up on something, and they're not, the rest of the egg hosts are not picking this up. So let's check a global thing. The miners in Chile, everyone knew about it. It was global. The terrorist attacks, the Princess Diana. When the Pope retired, they showed a variance in the spike as well. So the Global Consciousness Project is not focusing on small groups and what their consciousness has an effect on themselves and the world around them. They're focusing on global or world scale situations. I think this pandemic is going to give us some pretty interesting numbers. I think that I will be really interested to see what these look like at the end of this, because they're just
they got a page where you can go and look at it kind of in real time.
Yeah, so the Global Consciousness Project has a map, and you can go and see which ones are reporting right now. Looks like maybe 48 of them or so are constantly reporting. The information, because it is so many numbers, has to go back and then be put into graphs, workable graphs, because it's just a tremendous amount of information. And then they come out with the information every couple of months where you can go and look at it on this website. So I'll be following it and we'll do a little update. But I also wanted to, because if you go down the global consciousness, if you go down the rabbit trail, it will take you to Marusu Emoto. And that's this next slide. So Marusu Emoto was a scientist from Yokohama, Japan. And his work is super interesting because he works with water. And he has always said in all of his thesis is that water is the blueprint for our reality, and that emotional energies and vibrations change the physical structure of water. So in this particular experiment, he took distilled water from the same source, it was all the same batch of water, and he split it up into these I think it's six different segments. And instead of saying the words, he put his intention through meditation and then typed the words and taped them to the glass. And what he found is the water molecules responded differently to what was taped on the glass. And if you want to get online and check that out, Marusu Emoto, if you type him in, you can find all of his work. We have, for the YouTube viewers, a picture. Compassion was typed on a glass, and this is the same water, and it's been distilled, so it's got all of the minerals removed. It's been purified, and it all comes from the same source.
Was he freezing the water for these? Some of them look like snowflakes or ice crystals.
Correct. So the water was taken to a temperature that these crystalline structures could form. Okay. So it's just before freezing point, and then put under a microscope. So same water, same tributary. The intention, compassion looks like a snowflake. Mm-hmm. Thank you looks like a snowflake, but it's different. It's got I don't know. It's fat. It's got larger membranes, and it's got almost a circular shape. Wisdom also has a different shape.
It's fatter as well.
Now, he played heavy metal music and then typed the words heavy metal music. That molecule, listen, people, we are made up of 70% water.
So if you love shaken water, it looks like chocolate milk.
It has no structure at all.
Mm-hmm.
It looks disorganized. I will kill you looks disorganized, and you fool looks disorganized.
Mm-hmm.
So another interesting one is the before and after a Buddhist prayer. Like that one, I don't understand, because the water structure doesn't look very good after the Buddhist prayer.
Buddhist prayers aren't good prayers.
But his work is interesting because he just went for it. As a scientist, this is pseudoscience, and I mean they literally you'll get discredited by doing, out of the norm.
Maybe he did this on his personal time, lunch break.
Yes. So it's had a lot of it's had a lot of criticism, of course. Like, well, did you check your distillery to see if it had this, or perhaps this caused that? But ultimately, they have redone this experiment over and over and over again with all different kinds of things. If you type in the water, Masaru Emoto's water experiment on YouTube, everyone's redone it with everything. They've done it with rice in water. They've done it with fruit in water.
Does it come out with the same conclusion?
Yes, it's really weird. It's really weird.
Well,
so
maybe
I watched
it can affect the whole world. Maybe if we all think happy thoughts.
Well, or if
we're
we're just positive.
Go away, evil virus. Maybe it'll just go away.
Yes. Yes. Perhaps instead of saying, oh no, we're all going to die, if collectively we raise our vibration to a healing vibration, we focus on the good things, we don't panic and
Let's
just
write it down.
understand. Yeah, like find your Zen. If collectively we do that globally, if we can affect water molecules, which we are 70% made of, simply by putting intention into a word that is typed on them. Imagine if we put our intention, all of us, into the universe. And now, let me tell you, all I think about when I read this is holy water. Like, they're praying over should we be drinking it?
Yeah, or the blessed oil or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would like to
if you listeners want to try this project at home, please send us. Maybe we'll try it as a podcast.
Yeah.
We'll get some rice.
We'll
put it in water. We'll say bad things to one of them. We'll say nice things to one of them. And then we'll show you what's happening to the rice. I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, that would be interesting if we could affect the world as a whole through.
If you buy into the idea that we create both our successes and our strife.
I still think we're part of assimilation, and some 13-year-old bastard was messing with that doctor.
Beep, beep, beep.
He's messing with us, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if we buy into the idea that we create
a month ago,
our universe.
He got hacked by another 13-year-old little bastard. And that other 13-year-old little bastard put a tornado on his computer, and that's the virus.
That's got to be that COVID Pornhub.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Yep. I heard a rumor that I don't know. I haven't checked into it, but there's that Pornhub changed its name or something.
Well, they were being sued.
I should have checked in. Well, no, they changed it for COVID.
Oh, for crying out loud.
I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know. I just think that collectively we should all think happy thoughts. We should all relax.
Yes.
Enjoy the time with our families.
Yes.
And if we really do create the universe that we see, I mean, there are theories that this is all just a hologram, you know, or
maybe we're all in a dream.
Yeah, or worse yet, that we're hallucinating what we see because we're just picking up signals and our brains are making it up.
Maybe.
So I want to hallucinate a place where good things are happening, where do good things.
Yes. A land of toilet paper aplenty.
Yes. Toilet paper as far as you can see.
Now you're seeing somewhere over the rainbow.
Yeah. So go check out the Global Consciousness Project.
The yellow tile bathroom.
Oh, jeez.
That's interesting. I would like to. I don't know. I would like to see them. I understand it'd be tough to predict just because of the size. But then again, if they could get these eggs, if this is an actual thing, and if they could get these eggs allocated everywhere, so that there's one of these little eggs, say, in a crossover pattern of every 50 square miles, then they could possibly predict if a negative effect is going to happen. If that's if it's all verified.
Well, and the only instance that they have found that had any predatory nature to it was 9/11.
Well, that started at 4 a.m.
Yes. So it wasn't a large prediction, but it was likely when the planes left.
Well,
or when they started arriving at the airport.
When the bad guys woke up that morning with their idea, brush the cocaine off their face and kick the hookers out.
Yeah. So I don't think that they'll ever use this for prediction, but it would be nice for everyone to understand that
of all those things measured, that's the only thing that they've showed the measurements for the negative incident. They didn't show the measurement for the mine collapse. They didn't show the measurement for when Diana died. They only showed her funeral.
Correct. And when she died, they do have a measurement for that as well. I didn't include it because it wasn't as they're guessing that because everyone was like, did she die? Is this, I don't know if it's like kind of like Michael Jackson.
Like the rest of the world didn't care until the news decided to talk about it for the 2 weeks. That's all they talked about before the funeral. Princess Diana died, and you're like, who? Princess where's she at? She's in England. She's a princess of England. You're like, I don't care. I didn't. And I'm sorry. I felt bad that a person died, that a mother died, that that the lizard queen killed her so that she could drink the blood of many babies.
That's terrible.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't care because Princess Diana had no effect on my life. Yes, she did a couple good things. She helped out the poor and the indigent and did something to do with removing landmines from somewhere. But it wasn't something that had an effect or anything on my life. So I remember when she died, it came on the news, and then that's all they talked about. Like when one of them royals gets married, we're supposed to shut down everything else on earth for them.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're that are robbing people of England. And now the big deal is 2 of the royals have left, the one that married the American girl, and they're moving to Canada so that they can fight for lower fuel emissions as they fly their private jet over here and then fly around the world. Honestly, I don't care. They're assholes.
But see, you brought up a very good point. With each one of these instances, it was because of media that we had the response.
Well, that's a
whether high.
But 9/11, what else was happening then that brought up the global conscience? Was it the day before when Rumsfeld comes out and says, hey, we've lost like $14 billion. My bad. Or was it, or was it that there was enough people who knew about that event, regardless how you feel about enough people wherever?
Conspiracy theorists will say that the World Organization knew about this event prior to it happening, and that raised those.
Ooh, so if we look back to before COVID, say we look back to a week before they ate the bats.
How about we look back to when Bill Gates resigned from his company and sold all of his personal stocks?
Yeah, I'm not saying he's an evil lizard person, but an evil lizard person. We need to do another lizard person. We should have like a lizard person off. Who's the lizard?
We should do the Lizard Person of the Month Club.
Oh, that'd give out cards.
You get a trading card. Yeah. They get the facts that we know that they're a lizard person because on the back. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Interesting show. Go to the website. Betsy will have the PowerPoint she built for this, because we have crossed over from being just a podcast to building a PowerPoint. We have gone through
it's not really a PowerPoint. It's just a bunch of pictures on slides. I didn't include any cool graphs or movements or
when you put pictures on slides and you could roll through them again. Oh yeah.
Okay, so It is a PowerPoint, but it's not a good one. So sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm not.
but I'll include all of the pictures. You can check
Yes.
them out on our website. I'm going to put them in the additional stuff page on our website, and I'm going to put in the link to the Global Consciousness Project if you want to go check it out.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm in the works to have, I've got 2 more UFO researchers that I'm talking to right now and another ghost hunter. So trying to line up dates and times for them. Stay safe. Wash your hands.
Stay inside. Wash your damn
What is it? A
hands.
10-minute hand washing process?
It's a surgical hand washing process.
Yeah.
Look at it online. It's interesting. I'd never washed my hands the right way before. I do now.
Do you take 10 minutes to wash your hands?
It takes about 4 minutes.
Good hell. All right. Anyways, yeah, stay safe. Help out your neighbors. Humana, all the stuff we always say. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And if anybody out there is, I want to talk more cryptids soon.
Yeah.
I got a hankering. So
I wonder if cryptids can get COVID-19.
I wonder if lizard people can.
Yeah.
We lost Betsy's camera for a minute and she's back. Yeah. What if lizard people can get it?
I hope so.
Well, that'll be our test. We'll get some COVID, go sneeze on all the politicians and royals. And
did you see that lady that went into the store and intentionally coughed on all the produce? They had to throw away like 400 pounds of produce.
I didn't. Did she get charged?
She did.
Intentionally coughed on it.
Intentionally went in and coughed all over
Did she
it.
have the virus?
I have no idea.
Well, even then, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be.
People, don't be creeps.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's uncalled for. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week.